Channel Red Novel Chapter 1626. Better than you. Even with such a strong opponent in front of him, even though Quinn had taken a serious hit for the first time since he had woken up, the celestial vampire continued to be incredibly calm, because he was convinced that there was no way he could lose. Quinn knew he had multiple ways to take down the werewolf in front of him. If this was what Pure had been cooking up all this time, if this was the type of enemy that the world had in store for him after being asleep for more than 1,000 years, then it simply wasn't good up to par. Still, it looks like I have the chance to test out a few things. Quinn thought, a mild smile forming on his lips. Quinn estimated that the werewolf might have become the terror of the current age, just like One Horn and Graham had been during his time. Unfortunately for it, it just happened to encounter the celestial vampire, who was dying to test out a few new things. Activating his beast armor's new ability, he allowed his shadow to be used with it, leading to something strange. Both of the steel wings were encased with the dark purple shadow. Lately, Quinn hadn't been using the shadow ability for two reasons: for fear that it would let everyone know who he was, and as for the second reason, it was due to the level of enemies he was facing. When having over 100,000 MC cells, it was okay for him to take big hits, but against someone with great strength like this, his shadow would only be able to take a few hits. These shadow wings, they remind me of Arthur, but what can they exactly do? Quinn wondered. That's when he noticed that the created didn't use up any of his MC cells. The power of the shadow. I guess since I don't recognize you, you must be one of the guardians. The werewolf uttered more to himself than to Quinn. We were fated to fight either way, so I will just have to kill you here. The hybrid werewolf charged forward, and the outside of his hand started to glow with a white light. It looked similar to celestial energy, but Quinn had a feeling that it wasn't the same. Since Quinn didn't really have time to see what the system had to say about the new steel wings, he decided to test them out the old-fashioned way. This attack seems stronger than the air slashes he produced before. The energy looks to be more raw and concentrated on his hands. If the wings can't take it, then I'm going to have to think of something else, Quinn decided. Still, he soon moved his wing in front of him, and the werewolf, using all its strength, slashed right at the wing. What he expected to happen was the wing to fall off, but instead his hand had been stopped completely. What's this? Shouldn't I have lost some MC cells? Quinn wondered. Pulling his hand back, the werewolf started to strike one after another at the wings, yet his opponent just placed them in his way one after another, taking hit after hit, but not for a second did his MC cells go down at all. Is this really the effect of the steel wings, the demon tier armor? If I can enhance them with my shadow, and not affect my MC cells in any way. It is like having a permanent shadow that can block any type of attack, although the area is kinda limited. It was then that Quinn went to waft both his wings forward, and the werewolf could see a large smile plastered on his face. You won't be able to hit me again, Quinn announced, now charging forward himself. When jumping forward, he got right in the werewolf's face and flapped his wing, pushing him away. The next second, Quinn grabbed onto the furry arms, kneeing his opponent right in the chest. Hopping up on his other leg, Quinn then kicked the werewolf with the side of his leg, pushing him away, and at the same time, a large force of blood aura could be seen coming out of his foot and at the other end of the werewolf's body. The werewolf felt his body being crushed, yet his organs and bones were healing mid-flight. As he recovered, he looked up and could see Quinn right in front of him. The werewolf swung its arm to hit Quinn's head, but he soon knocked both of the clawed arms away, and the next second, Quinn used both of his fists to slam the werewolf right in the chest, sending him flying across the floor, knocking the ground up with it. What is going on? The werewolf was starting to worry as he tried to stand up while his body had yet to recover. Due to the severity of the wounds, it needed a bit more time, though his opponent was naturally not going to wait for that to happen. Wasn't he at the same speed as me just moments ago? How is he suddenly getting the upper hand? Don't tell me, was he going easy on me the entire time? The werewolf reached a frightening possibility. As Quinn rushed forward, that wasn't the case at all. Quinn's speed had the stats of 200, he also had the demon tier beast gear to help him. The werewolf's physical capabilities were in a way better than his, but currently they were both even in that department, but Quinn had a few things that would give him the edge. One was utilizing chi properly to enhance his body to the next degree, and the second was even though they were both fast, Quinn was a gifted fighter. The celestial vampire had the clear advantage thanks to his skills of Muay Baron, as well as the experience of having fought countless times at the high level, and it was clear that his opponent lacked in that area. I'm interested to find out more about those guardians you mentioned, Quinn noted, as he charged forward again. It looked like he had made a fist towards the head of the werewolf, and covering up his head the werewolf was ready to block the attack, but that was when something strange happened. Put from Quinn's body, condensed forms of blood were forming from his side. He was using his aura, but not just in any way, he had done so, to create another set of arms. He now had 4 sets of arms to attack with. With the original first he pounded it in the werewolf's head, and with the other blood aura formed arms, Quinn pounded his body in more, hitting the werewolf in front of him. Each fist would send the werewolf flying through the air, and gushes of blood coming out from his mouth. As it did, Quinn had to make sure to keep up with him flying towards him, so he could continuously hit the werewolf. The large blood attacks are too slow to kill the werewolf in one go, so I will just have to pound him until he's dead. The distance covered by the two fighting was enormous, and it was to the point that without realizing it, Quinn soon was coming to the border of another area. With the werewolf weakened and the other fists hitting it, Quinn started to form the blood drill in his right hand, planning to finish it in one go. Just as he was ready to throw it, he sensed multiple different attacks coming his way. Immediately, Quinn folded in his wings to block the attack and the werewolf continued to fall back, until it laid flat on its back in the ground. Opening his wings, Quinn could see nearly a dozen people having surrounded him. "Stop right there, vampire!" a female shouted. When looking at the eyes of the 10 that had come to meet Quinn, he could see they were glowing yellow. They were all Dhampirs. "You are now in Pierce territory. A member of the Vampire Corps is not allowed to step foot in this territory, and you are not to hurt our people. Continue your actions, and we shall regard that as a declaration of war." Another Dhampir threatened him. The werewolf had gotten off the ground, he was incredibly weak, and the special healing didn't seem to be doing much for him anymore. As Quinn expected, there had to be a limit, just like there was to all things. "It looks like we fought across the whole beast area and made it to Pierce territory. So are pure, humans and Dhampirs all living on this side of Mars?" Quinn wondered. "I am not a member of the Vampire Corps," Quinn declared, as he used his shadow to put away the demon tier set, but at the same time with the shadow equip he had placed on the blue Fang set instead. "Which means that my actions have nothing to do with the Vampire Corps." Nitro Accelerate activated. The next second, the Dhampirs couldn't even see Quinn move. He still had the blood drill ready in his hand. The werewolf in front of him, and the Dhampirs protecting him, he knew that this person was possibly important to them, which was why he needed to finish him off there and then, and that was exactly what he had done, as his blood drill went right through the werewolf's head, and he was no longer as his body dropped to the floor. "If you want to stop me, don't blame me for what will happen next." Channel Red Novel Chapter 1627, still alive back at the border of the Vampire Crop's base, eventually, 2 more beast waves had come towards them from different directions. None of them headed towards where Peter and the others were. Seeing this, Jake and Vicky went ahead, running off to help, while Peter and his group stayed back. At the same time, it didn't take long for Peter to revert to his normal form, and while doing so, he quickly used the transformation ability to change his appearance once again. Since there was such a drastic change in the first place, many wouldn't notice or bat an eyelid at the changes happening on his face. Lucia and Jessica continued to look at Peter while Mitchell was attending to the injured vampires, offering them blood supplies. Minnie was still sleeping, but unlike before, her expression was much peaceful. This calmed others down a bit. Pitching blood into the mouth of one of the new recruits, Mitchell couldn't help but turn towards Peter. Our group suffered no casualties, but not one vampire died. This is unheard of. When General Yadi hears of this, they will definitely be interested in what happened, but how do I explain to them something that I don't even understand myself? Just who are these people, especially that vampire from before? Now looking off into the distance, Mitchell wondered where the other vampire had gone and what was happening beyond the waves. With the help of Jake and Vicky, the other two areas that were attacked were now pushing back the beast waves, and it was almost at the end of the battle. However, with it being a level 4 horde, there would be a large final wave. When seeing this, the general would call the vampire groups to one area, yet there had been no word from the general since the beginning. At the same time, usually, there wouldn't be so much time between waves. It was clear that something must have happened. Bin. Mitchell called over. Once the new guys have healed up, gather them all, and wait for an order from the base. I have a feeling this battle might be over, but we can't be so sure. Bin gave the nod, agreeing to the order. Sir, where are you going to go? I just need to see something, Mitchell replied and ran off into the direction where Quinn had headed. These thoughts weren't alone with Lieutenant Mitchell, since the general was thinking the same thing. I have checked the sensors, and they weren't wrong. They sensed that this was a level 4 horde. But what happened to the beasts? Did they turn around for some reason, or did something else happen? General Yadi thought. It was then that he got the report that Jake and Vicky had finished dealing with the beast wave in the last two areas. Call them over to me, and let's have a little talk, Yadi ordered. Quest complete, you have defeated an ancient enemy of the vampires. Reward, Celestial Energy +5, this was unexpected, so are there other ways that I can get Celestial Energy, other than fighting Celestials and getting followers? Looking at this, Quinn wondered if this was something unique to him. In the first place, Celestials didn't have a system as he did. Vincent always talked about how the system essentially allowed him to improve at a fast rate compared to other vampires, and maybe it would be the same here as well. 16/19 Celestial Energy, still, I'm assuming 5 points of Celestial Energy is pretty low. Because if one follower doing the condition would give 1 point of Celestial Energy, then I could just get 1,000 people to sacrifice blood to a statue of me for 1,000 points, right? Thinking about this, Quinn thought it would have been so easy in the past, but it's no use now. He would take it one step at a time, and he didn't really have time to think much about his current situation because 10 Dhampirs were encircling him. In fact, he could see more coming towards him. Well, big balls, what are you going to do now? Take out the whole city? Ray asked. The werewolf was dead on the ground, but the Dhampirs that were protecting him weren't exactly attacking Quinn. Perhaps because of the speed he had just shown them. Emergency, there is a suspected guardian that is currently attacking us. One of the Dhampirs shouted down a receiver. Guardian. That's twice that I heard of this word by now, and that werewolf said that when he saw my shadow powers. So I guess there are those with the shadow powers. Are they with Laxmus then? Perhaps it's not good to be associated with these guardians, but it will get me out of my current situation at least. It probably wasn't a good idea to kill the werewolf. If it's a creation of Pure, it very well might be their trump card that they had created after 1,000 years of research. To learn that a vampire took it out just like that, I might have caused quite a stir. The question is, what do I do now? Quinn could sense more Dhampirs, some very powerful ones, were coming his way. Of course, he disliked Pure, but he still at least wanted to know what was going on. I guess I just need to be patient and find the right moment to leave. It's not like they can stop me anyway. Just then, while he was thinking, 2 of the Dhampirs acted, slashing out yellow lines of aura, an attack similar to the blood swipe. Quinn already knew he couldn't control these and that the red aura seemed to have a weakness against the yellow aura. It was somewhat similar to how water would trump fire. However, just like a game, if there was enough fire, the water would evaporate, and it was something similar here too. Quinn surrounded his hands in the red aura and just swiped at the 2 slashes, breaking them in an instant. "Could you do me a favor, Ray?" Quinn asked. "What?" Ray asked as Quinn slashed out his hand towards the two Dhampirs that attacked him. "Try to make sure these Dhampirs don't kill themselves while they're in the shadow space, maybe frighten them a little. I have a feeling I might get some important information from them." Quinn replied. "Wait, didn't you just say you weren't going to cause any trouble? And now you're planning to kidnap Dash?" It was already too late, as Quinn had used Shadow Lock on the two Dhampirs. With Ray there as well, he was sure that at least Ray, currently residing in the dragon's body, could stop them from hurting the shadow space. The next second, Quinn disappeared in front of everyone's eyes and headed back towards the vampire core base. A few moments later, the rest of the Dhampirs were seen coming out from the base. It looked like a squad of around 15 or so. Then from another direction, those who appeared to be more human were also coming out. When the two squads met in the middle, they just stood around the dead body of the werewolf that was on the ground. "How is this possible?" one of the pure members said. "Who did this? Who was able to kill him? Agent 4 will be furious. Who did this? What did they look like? Was it Laxmus?" The Dhampirs looked visibly shocked and explained to their group leader about the mysterious attacker kidnapping two of their people. The situation wasn't very favorable to them either. "It wasn't Laxmus," a Dhampir answered. "We believe it was one of the Guardians, but it wasn't Laxmus." "A Guardian? What are they doing here of all places? Did they know that he was currently here? I didn't know a Guardian was strong enough to take them on. It looks like we might have underestimated the red vampires. Perhaps they are closer to finding the red heart, or they might already have it in their hands and are ready to make their move. We must report this to Zero immediately." Channel Red Novel Chapter 1628. I am Quinn. Talon Mitchell was nervous when he had decided to head out. He was a little worried that either the beasts had gained some sort of intelligence and were trying to spring a trap on him, or he might be running straight towards the incoming wave, which was delayed for some reason. Still, he was confident in his skills that if he did come across a wave of beasts, he would at least be able to retreat on time and head back before he got into trouble, but as he continued to fly ahead, he saw no such waves. In fact, he didn't see any signs of battle either. "I'll go as far as the sensors, I should be able to spot something then. If I go further than that, there is a chance I could run into Pierce people," Mitchell thought. But just then, he finally saw something up ahead, something he hadn't expected at all. Around a couple of kilometers ahead from where the sensors would be, he could see it, several demigod-tier beasts lying motionless on the ground, dead. It really was a level 4 horde, but why are they dead? What happened to them? Although hesitatingly, Mitchell started to inspect the bodies, still scared that they could wake up. Maybe he could take out one demigod-tier beast on his own, but that was if he could still use his blood rifles. To take down 5 of them would be a mammoth of a task, retreating would be the best defense. After looking through the dead bodies of the large beasts, he noticed 2 things. One of them was the fact that the person who had killed them didn't even bother to take out the beast crystal inside. He could only imagine either a madman or a person with no use for such crystals had done this. Either one did not make sense to him, but then he noticed the even more shocking thing. I'm sure of it. I wanted to ignore it, but the hole in these beasts' bodies. That's definitely what they would look like if someone used the rifle blood bullet. Since it was a skill he had developed himself, he would for sure notice it, and there was no doubt in his mind. Of course, Mitchell knew that he wasn't the one that had done this, so he could only think of one other person, the vampire he had met today, who was all to copy his move. How is he able to use the rifle bullet more than once? He used it during our fight, and here, he used it to get rid of all of the beasts. I've never heard of a vampire not suffering a drawback from using an ability. None of this is making any sense. Just who is that vampire? Is he the leader of the red vampires? Are they trying to infiltrate the vampire core? Although this seemed probable if that was the case, Mitchell thought they would have decided to lay low and then destroy them from within. Also, Why bother protecting the vampire core base if that was the case? The red vampire's ideals might have differed from the vampire crops, but they didn't tend to clash either. It was then that he felt a gust of wind, and the very person he was thinking of landed right in front of him. "Oh, I didn't expect you to be out here," Quinn said. Blinking a few times with his good eye, Mitchell wondered where Quinn had even come from. He should have seen him in the distance, but it was almost as if the latter teleported in front of him. "You!" Mitchell called out, not being able to take it anymore. "Who are you? It's obvious you're not a normal vampire." Mitchell paused there. He didn't know what to say or what to do, but now looking at Quinn in front of him, he didn't believe the latter to be a bad person, and before he knew it, words came out of his mouth that Quinn never expected to. Mitchell knelt respectfully down in front of Quinn. I want to become your follower. Please, I want to follow you, but for that, I must know who you are. Please." This was unexpected for Quinn himself, and he didn't know what to say. I had heard that vampires were like this. They chose to follow strong and respect them, but what made him come to this conclusion? Looking at the dead beasts, he now had a good idea. "Honestly," Quinn replied. "If I told you who I was, I don't think you would believe me." Clenching his fists, Mitchell wanted to show his dedication. If he followed this vampire, he was sure he would amount to great things. "Please, I have my suspicions. You might be a red vampire, you might be an original or one of the leaders of the 13 families. These are the only conclusions I can come up with. Whatever the case, I can tell you are not a vampire that means harm or wishes to do bad. So I wish to follow you and grow with you." Mitchell shouted, showing his determination. Because of the way Mitchell was acting, Quinn was reminded of someone. Edward, the old vampire knight of the 10th family, was loyal to Vincent from the very end, and he could feel something similar from Mitchell. Maybe I can use this to my advantage. Couldn't I try to see if he could complete the condition? He wouldn't have to be turned into a dedicated follower, but I could make him a follower. At the same time, having someone quite high up in the vampire core will help move and find out more information. I can't show you who I am, not at this moment, but I will definitely let you see the truth today. But if you really wish to follow me as you said, you have the right to know who I am." Quinn answered. "My name is Quinn Talon. I'm sure you know who I am and why I have decided to keep this a secret. One day, everything will come to light. For now, you will have to keep my connection with you a secret." It felt nice saying his name and not hiding behind who he was. Quinn hoped that once he understood the situation, he would no longer need to hide his identity, or at least become a force as great in the world as in the past. "I wonder how he will react to knowing my real name," he thought. Seeing how respectful Mitchell was before, now surely he would be even more compliant. "Why?" Mitchell said. "Why, after I have shown this much dedication, you won't tell me who you are? I just wish to know your name to follow you." Mitchell shouted once again, still kneeling respectfully. It was quite expected. Mitchell had heard of Quinn's words, but this was hard for him to believe. Quinn Talon was not a normal name for him. It was the name of the hero Quinn, the legendary figure who had led the whole world against the vicious enemies and won the world-enveloping battle. Shaking his head, Quinn, having expected this situation, didn't bother to convince the former. "I already told you, if I told you who I was, that you wouldn't believe me, and it seems like that is the case. As I said, when I get back, or we are in a position, I can show you who I am. If you wish to follow me, then do me a favor. Once a month, offer blood to a statue of the hero Quinn. If you do this, you are free to follow me, and as a follower of mine, I will do my best to protect you." Quinn paused for a moment and continued. "I always protect those that are loyal to me. Now, would you like to head back to the base? My wings are a bit damaged, but I could carry you there." Mitchell felt like the interaction between the two of them was strange. He still didn't understand why the vampire wouldn't tell him who he was. What was the big secret he had to hide? Why was there a strange requirement on top of that? Is he trying to test me? I will do what you ask of me. I will do that as soon as possible. Perhaps one day, you will see me as worthy enough to grant me knowing your real name instead of saying your hero Quinn. Mitchell said as he stood up. Shaking his head once again, Quinn now knew it would be tough to convince others he was who he said he was, but perhaps it was for the best. Since Mitchell didn't say anything about taking them back, Quinn picked up Mitchell anyway and placed him on his back as he continued to run forward as fast as he could. The Blue Fang usage time had run out, but Quinn was still fast as ever, running as fast he could. Experiencing this speed, Mitchell had one thought as he replayed the scene that went through their head. Wait a second, what if he isn't lying? Is this really the hero Quinn Talon? Thinking of this, his whole body shook. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1629, the first follower being carried by another vampire, especially when one could still use his own legs, was a little embarrassing. However, Mitchell wasn't even worrying about that. For one, he knew that they were going at a speed far faster than they could have if they were to run side by side. However, what was really distracting for him was whether or not this person was Quinn Talon. The problem is, why would such a powerful vampire have a reason to lie? Mitchell thought. Unless they plan to use the hero's name for something else. Still, it doesn't matter that I have chosen to follow this person. The one who chose to go out and fight, to protect the rest of the vampire corps. He is the ideal that we follow, and I will do my best to get him to the position he needs to be. When getting close to the vampire corps border, Mitchell noticed that Quinn had slowed down. Looking at him, it wasn't because he was tired or out of stamina, instead, it was to not make others too suspicious of him. Master. After thinking about how to address the person with him, Mitchell finally called out. I need to ask, do the other vampires know how you are? Do they know your true strength? The ones you brought with you were quite skilled. Hearing this, Quinn wasn't too sure if he was talking about the red vampires or perhaps talking about Peter and the others, but if the waves weren't too hard, Peter wouldn't have had time to show any of his great skills. It was most likely only the red vampires had done well during the assessment. The red vampires have their own goal. At the moment, I'm trying to grow and rise in the ranks of both organizations to find out what is going on, so it's best not to tell the other. Not quite, Quinn replied. The three females with the white are my companions, and as for the other vampires, we met them in a town earlier. There was some trouble in which we both helped each other out and decided to head together since both the groups were heading to the vampire corps. They weren't far off now, and it looked like most of the vampires had already been called back to the barracks and base, only leaving a small skeleton crew outside. Seeing this, Mitchell jumped off and started to run himself. Then, if you don't mind, Master, for me to help you with what you wish, please let me ask one more question. What is such a strong vampire like yourself doing at the vampire corps? Mitchell perhaps should have asked this question first when becoming his follower, but as stated before, upon seeing Quinn using his powers, Mitchell felt like this person was one who he was meant to follow. I'm just trying to head back to Earth, so I can find out what happened to my friends. Just as they reached the wall, a ship was seen leaving the area and heading back to where Quinn and Mitchell had come from. Now knowing what was on the other side of the vast land of beasts, he wondered just what reason the vampire corps would have to head over to them. Perhaps it was something to do with him. From here on out, it is best if you follow me. It looks like the general of the base has already called everyone in. He will soon call for the lieutenants to make a report and then call for everyone to meet up to go through the attack that had occurred today. I will do my best to tell them of the deeds you have achieved during this wave. Mitchell said, holding out the crystals he had extracted in his hands that were proof of what Quinn had done. Nodding his head, Quinn thought it was best for Mitchell to do so, and it would allow him to see how well or how much he could trust Mitchell toward such tasks. He also thought it was best not to reveal the werewolf encounter he had. Mitchell guided Quinn to where he needed to be, just over the wall, where the barracks were located. There, several large tents pitched up. Here, the injured were being tended to. At the same time, they were gathering crystals from the dead beasts, hauling parts of their body and more. Although the beasts' bodies would decay quite quickly once they removed the crystals, certain parts wouldn't be lost and could be used for weaponry. This made them a pretty vital resource. "Nate, over here!" Jessica shouted, waving over, and Quinn could see that his group, along with Hannah's, were next to each other, but for some reason, no one else was willing to sit right next to them. All the other vampires were seated away in the distance. What happened? Quinn thought. Currently, the vampire lieutenant was called for a meeting. Along the vast wall that would split the faction borders was attached a fairly large building. It was the same height as the wall, so it meant that attackers could not know where such a building was just from looking outward. The building itself was large and would be where most of the Vampire Corps members met or did the required due diligence and needed more for the base to operate. In simple words, it was their headquarters. Inside a large hall that was large enough to fit all of the Vampire Corps members in it, although only 13 were present, these were the lieutenants of the Vampire Corps base and the general himself, General Yadi. "Well, the person I wanted to speak to has finally arrived," Yadi said with a smirk. "Sorry for being late, sir, but I wanted to check by myself if the wave had truly come to an end. Since I had the new recruits with me, if the bulk of the wave was to attack my current position, I would have been in serious trouble," Mitchell reported. "And yet your section was the only one to suffer no casualties. I hear you have quite the promising recruits," an old vampire said as he stroked his beard. Mitchell could tell that rumors had already been spreading about Peter's feat, and if anything, all the lieutenants would be after him. Perhaps with the strength Peter had shown today, he would be more suited to join the Vampires Corps of Earth and be sent there. "We have concluded while you were away." Yadi began to speak. The level 4 horde must have noticed the strength of Jake Green. In turn, after the first few waves had been defeated with ease, they had stopped their attack. Although we have no way to confirm this, and it is something incredibly rare, it was the only thing we could come up with. I guess it was a good thing that they were here. "Where are they?" a larger man asked. An emergency call was made via the Green family, and it looks like it was something to do with the Pure territory. Maybe they were attacked as well, or thought we had something to do with it. Either way, we haven't been informed of anything yet. So we will leave it to them. Now Mitchell knew what the ship leaving earlier was. "If I may interrupt," Mitchell said. "The attack from the horde didn't end due to Jake. There was another promising recruit. He had run straight into the incoming beat wave when the fighting began. He met with the final wave of the horde and defeated them all himself." Of course, Mitchell knew that his words would seem like they had come from a madman, which was why he quickly showed them all the crystals. The others, eyes widened, trying to figure out whether or not they should believe the story of their fellow lieutenant. "If what you say is true, then we must meet this person," Yadi replied. More was discussed in the meeting, and soon, the lieutenant was instructed to head back and gather the rest of the Corps members for an assembly. On his way back, Mitchell stumbled across a statue of the hero Quinn in one of the grand hallways. Seeing it, he was reminded about what he needed to do. "They don't look the same, but he told me to do this either way," Mitchell thought. He pulled out a small blade and while standing on one knee, he made a small cut on his hand. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1630, The Little Talent. Instead of Peter, it was Lucia summarizing everything that occurred after Quinn went into the beast wave. She told him about the arrival of Vicky and Jake after he had left, and how Peter had changed his form and almost gotten in a head-on conflict with Jake until Vicky interfered. Though, the most interesting part for Quinn was Peter's transformation. At first, he thought she had exaggerated what had happened, but that didn't seem to be the case. So just like the others, it seems like the celestial energy allowed Peter to transform, and that was only with 3 points. It sounds like there was a significant boost. Looking at Peter, his form was back to normal, at least the disguise was the same. It was one of the worries for Quinn since he had never seen someone revert to their original form after using celestial energy other than himself because he had killed all of the other ones, apart from Laxmus, who had run away. I wish we were alone because there are so many questions I would like to ask. Other than a physical appearance, what other effects did it have, and why were Peter's changes different from the others that just turned into giant monsters? While the others continued to brief about everything that had happened, Quinn's heart sank a bit when he had heard about what had happened to Minnie. Although, looking at her, she seemed to be doing well, as she was still smiling away and playing with the other red vampires, who seemed gentle with her as if she was glass. Even if she was annoying them somehow, everyone made sure not to hurt her because there were two people who were sure to act if anything happened to her. What is wrong with me? She's not even my child, and I'm acting like this? Is it because I feel guilty about what's happened to her mother and that I haven't told her the truth? I guess she is my responsibility now. The second the two made eye contact, Minnie came running over towards Quinn and opened her arms for a hug. In doing so, Quinn too spread out his arms and lifted her in the air, swinging her around a few times in circles. She screamed with joy before Quinn eventually stopped as he noticed he was perhaps going a little too fast and had even made a dent on the ground. "Ah, come on, you can go faster than that, I know you can, and I can take it," Minnie cried. "That's enough for you. I heard you had been doing some dangerous things," Quinn said, finding it hard to plainly properly tell her off because he was pretty impressed that such a young vampire could produce a blood rifle. It certainly was something that he would never have been able to do. "It's called talent," Ray replied. Quinn ignored the comment from the voice inside. It seemed like Ray wasn't having a hard time with the other two Dhampirs in captivity. If he could still tell what was happening on the outside, then it meant he must not have been having too much trouble dealing with them. Anyway, Minnie certainly was someone Quinn needed to watch out for, and it would be best if he kept an eye on her. Perhaps she would be able to unlock the abilities of the Shadow in the near future. The group, of course, had also asked where Quinn had gone and what he saw, to which he replied that he thought he had seen some greater beasts up ahead, but it seemed like his eyes were playing tricks on him. The red vampires didn't even believe this lie, as even the other vampires in the core units were talking about how there was meant to be a final wave that never appeared. The question was, did Quinn defeat them or not? These vampires there are clearly not normal, Derek thought. I'm starting to wonder if it would be best to make them out allies or to have nothing to do with them. I wonder what Hannah is thinking. Maybe it would be best to contact our leader for a decision. Hannah's judgment clearly is being a little misguided by something. It was then, at that moment, that Quinn had received a notification from his system. A follower has completed the condition for this month. 1 additional celestial point has been granted, 17/20 Clystal energy. For a second, Quinn was quite startled. Although he had told Mitchell to do such a thing, he wasn't expecting him to do something like this so soon and even wondered if the latter would accept such an abnormal condition. I guess he really does want to follow me, vampires are a little strange, Quinn thought. Either way, his experiment was a success, and now he knew that the best way to get celestial points and the easiest was to complete the condition. At the same time, as soon as Quinn had gained the celestial point, a special feeling overcame his body. It was a powerful and sweet sensation as if he had tasted something for the first time again. It was the same sensation when he tasted blood for the first time as a vampire. This felt good, I might get addicted to this. Fortunately, I'm not craving such a feeling, perhaps because I'm used to suppressing myself the same way with blood, but that's because I have only been gaining a few points at a time. What if a big amount of celestial energy was to come to me at once? The system stated that for my condition, they would have to do this once a month. If that's the case and there were many followers, the feeling would be quite overwhelming. If this feeling were what the other Celestials craved, then it would be better for them to complete the condition altogether. I have finally reached 20 points but still haven't leveled up, which means I still require many points to get to the next Celestial level. So far, this Celestial system hasn't been the best other than making Peter stronger. Which perhaps is why the other Celestials give out their energy more freely. Attention! A core member shouted from a distance facing all of the vampires that had gathered. Everyone is to head to the assembly hall inside the base for a briefing on today's events. There will also be announcements, contribution rewards and more. Your lieutenant will give you your next instructions, so stay with your lieutenant unless called up by them or a higher-ranking individual. After the announcement was made, all the vampires readied themselves and did as instructed to follow their respective lieutenants. When Quinn met eyes with Mitchell, Quinn nodded his head at him with a slight smile to indicate he was happy with what the latter had done. Mitchell caught the sign, wondering how this vampire could possibly know, but it made his belief even stronger that this vampire was indeed special. Still, there was a concerned look on Mitchell's face for some reason. Everyone was in the hall, standing in their groups and on stage, all the lieutenants and General Yadi. Has Vicky already left? I wanted to ask her a few questions. I will need to find out where she has gone to get some answers. Quinn thought. General Yadi had started his speech, talking about how good they had done in the horde attack. He then took some time to speak and mourned about the lost lives of the vampires. There weren't many, but it looked like 1 or 2 vampires had been hurt too much before Jake and Vicky could arrive. At the closure of his speech, General Yadi looked towards Quinn and the others. Finally, there are those who contributed the most in this horde attack, and I would like them to be invited up on stage for all to see. After all, it was because of them that this level 4 attack felt like simply a level 1 attack, and we must make sure that these statements are true. Yadi said with a smirk. Hearing these words, Mitchell shook his head slightly. Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel.